Hello, book friends. I'm Jen, and welcome to my reading life, and welcome to another bookish conversation. Actually, this is part 2 of a conversation that I had with my friend Melissa, which was uploaded back in December during Vlogmas. And I had fully intended to get part 2 up early in January, and life just got away from me, but I did not want you all to miss out on the wonderful books that Melissa and I talked about in the other half of our conversation. So today, this is part 2 of my chat with Melissa. You can find Melissa on Instagram at A Duchess Inside. She also has a YouTube channel. It's inactive right now, but I highly recommend going and checking out some of her lovely, cozy vlogs that she has posted over the years. They are really wonderful, and I think you can see she is a bookish kindred spirit to us all. And now, without further ado, let us get into part 2 of my bookish conversation with Melissa. Hi, Melissa. Welcome.
And thanks so much for having me. It's really fun
I
to
am
hear.
so thrilled to have you here today.
And as far as my reading life, I've just always been a reader,
Mhm.
and um, we'll talk about it probably a little more. But it kind of seems to come in waves for me. Some good heavy duty reading times, and other times when I'm struggling a little bit more. But I
Mhm.
guess that's just life.
Well, I know you mentioned you've kind of always been a reader, but tell us maybe a little bit about your reading journey and, kind of how that's evolved over time.
So I was an early reader. I think I was probably reading before I came into kindergarten.
Mhm.
Um, and I just loved reading. I always had a book. We went to the library all the time. My parents would take us to the library, and I just remember that was just the best feeling to walk into that children's section and just browse around, and you could have whatever you wanted, um, and have our little weekly trips. And that the library trips at school as well were always a big deal, and the Scholastic Book Fair and all that good stuff.
Mhm.
And yeah, I was the kind of child who would set the alarm for an hour early before school so I could have time to read. Um, I don't do that now. I need my sleep now that
Right.
and I would walk down the hall with a book. I mean, that was my identity, was the reading girl.
Hmm.
And I loved the Little House on the Prairie series. I was obsessed with that series. And then I moved on to Anne of Green Gables. Those were like my top two
Hmm.
reading obsessions when I was young. Um, and yeah, and then I went to college and I minored in English. I started out as an English major, but then switched to psychology. But I still always had a lot of literature classes in my class schedule.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I just always and was always reading on my own too, even when I was busy in college.
Hmm.
Then I graduated and got a job, and real life hit. And so the reading time went down, down, down. And I was still reading, but just not the same level
Hmm.
that you have the opportunity to enjoy as a kid or in college.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I don't know really what happened. I think I was reading probably too much literary fiction, which is what I felt like I should be reading because it was, the important stuff. I didn't want to
Hmm.
read trash. Very much of a snob. I'm not as much of a reading snob now. But when I got out of college, I was trying to read all this literary fiction, and it just wasn't resonating with me. I guess I just didn't love it.
Hmm.
And eventually my fiction reading just went downhill. And I started reading more nonfiction. Um, so for several years, I would say mostly I just read nonfiction. And I actually brought a few of my favorite
Oh,
nonfiction,
yay.
if you don't mind. So
Yes.
this is the kind of thing I would read a lot of back in those days, my nonfiction. So I
Hmm.
don't know if you've ever read
I
just,
have that book.
yeah, of course you do. But I was like really in a phase in my late 20s, early 30s when I was like everything about France,
Yes.
French women don't get fat, that whole book.
Hmm.
But
Yep.
this is a really good book called Entre Nous, A
Yes.
Woman's Guide to Finding Her Inner French Girl by Deborah Olivier. So this is
Hmm.
a fun one. Of course, our beloved Susan
Yes.
Branch. You can't beat
Yes.
her.
No, you
So
can't.
these are my two favorites, Fine Romance and Martha's Vineyard, Isle of Dreams.
Hmm.
Lately, I've been reading this like every January. I'll read it
Hmm.
because it's about, starting your life over and
Hmm.
finding new goals and a new way of living. And I just feel like it's so inspiring to read that at the beginning of a new year.
Yes.
So I may read it again this January. We'll see.
I love that. I love that.
And then one, no, two more. So I went through a phase also of being really into presidential history, especially
Mm-hmm.
FDR and JFK. So I always recommend this book. If you don't think you like nonfiction, you might like it because it's very readable.
Mm-hmm.
No Ordinary Time. It's about the home front during World War II.
I was
And
just talking to my mom about Doris Kearns Goodwin because I've never read anything by her. Do you think that one's a good place to start with
I
her?
think so. I
Okay.
really like it.
Okay.
I know a lot of people like Team of Rivals about
Yes.
Abraham Lincoln.
Lincoln.
I haven't read that one yet.
Mm-hmm.
But this one was just fascinating to me, and it kind of sparked a whole obsessions where I read just tons of books about Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt. So
Yes.
highly recommend that one.
Okay. Putting that on my TBR.
And then speaking of decorating, so this is my very favorite home decor book,
Mm-hmm.
The Imperfect Home by Deborah Needleman. And I just got so much inspiration for how to decorate
Mm-hmm.
in this book. So if you're looking for something that's readable and fun and
Mm-hmm.
it's illustrated, so no picture, no like
Mm-hmm.
photographs, which I really love because it
Yes.
feels less prescriptive. It's more like
Mm-hmm.
just gives you ideas and it's
Yes.
just fun to look at the watercolors. So
Right.
I've read this book 3 or 4 times. Every time I get into a mood to decorate my house,
Mm-hmm.
this one out. So
Yes.
so that's the kind of things I was reading.
Mm-hmm.
Not as much fiction for a while. And then I would say it was probably around 2015 or 2016, the series Outlander came out.
Mm-hmm.
Stars. And I started watching it, and then I didn't want to wait to find out what was going to happen. So I ended up picking up the book series. I brought the first one. This is
Mm-hmm.
a long book in a very long series.
Yes.
But I blasted through those books in like
Mm-hmm.
months. And it was the first time since I was a kid, even though the subject matter is very decidedly adult, but
Right.
it's the first time that I felt that immersion again
Mm-hmm.
of like every little detail was I was in this world, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
I knew these characters and all I wanted to do was read. And it felt so good. I was like, oh, it's been so long since I felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I blasted through that series. And from there, I met some women online that were into the show and um, into reading, and they were very into historical romance, which is a genre that I always thought was part of the trashy book genre. It was beneath me, which I hate to say that
Mm-hmm.
because it's so judgmental and wrong because I ended up really getting to like some of those books in that genre.
Mm-hmm.
It's like any other genre, you have to pick and choose. Some are
Of course.
horrible, some are wonderful. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I started reading those, and really for about
Mm-hmm.
a year, I read almost exclusively historical romance. I was just like, it was like I couldn't get enough. I was trying all
Mm-hmm.
different kinds of historical romance.
Right.
Um, so that's still one of my favorite genres, especially
Mm-hmm.
if I'm in a slump or just feeling like I don't want to read anything else. Sometimes I'll pick up one of those and it'll get me back in the mood.
Right.
Um,
Yes. How many did you read? What was it, like September or something? How many you read, like a huge stack of historical romance
yeah.
that got you back into,
Oh,
you've been
this
in quite a
year,
slump this
yeah,
year.
this year I did read quite a few. I went back and reread some of my favorites
Mm-hmm.
by Meredith Duran. She's one of my favorite
Okay.
historical romance authors.
Mm-hmm.
She has a very she has a very intelligent style,
Okay.
and her books are mostly set in the Victorian era,
Oh.
and they're really good. She's a really good writer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll talk about another my very favorite historical romance writer
Okay.
a bit later on. But
Two questions for you about historical romance. The first is what level of open or closed door do you read? And what do you have a particularly favorite time period that you like to read in historical
I
romance?
will read open or close. I don't really
Okay.
mind as long as the story is good and as
Hmm.
long as it's not there's not sex scenes just for the sake of them. You know,
Right. Yeah.
the ones I really like, they contribute something to the story.
Hmm.
I know that
Yes.
probably sounds silly to some people that would never read. It can be done where it's
Yes.
actually
Hmm.
integral to the story and the characterization. Um, so, but then I also really like some that are closed door and,
Hmm.
sweet romance, as they
Right.
say. It's all about the characterization, how good is the writing.
Hmm.
That's what really matters to me.
Hmm.
And as far as the time period, I don't know. I really like a lot of them. I feel like most things these days are, if there's even historical romance, it's not very popular right now in the publishing world compared to
Hmm.
contemporary. Um, but most things seem to be Regency era,
Right.
which is fine.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of gets boring after a while.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, so I like Victorian era, or even Westerns, or
Hmm.
um, things set in American history, or I mean anything really,
Right.
as long
Right.
as it's good. But
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. I've read historical romance. It's been a very long time since I've read anything that probably like truly classifies as that, but I did go through a phase in my like 20s where I read quite a few.
Well,
Um,
and they're fun and easy to read,
they
and
are.
you know, they're just good light reads whenever, and
Hmm.
they're gonna have a happy ending, even if it's the most angsty, heart-wrenching story, which
Right.
one for you later that I'll mention, like it'll just rip your heart out, but in the best way.
Oh,
And
good.
you're gonna have a happy ending. That's what's
Right.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. The types of books that you're most drawn to. I mean, we've talked a little bit about the historical romance and clearly you've had a nonfiction phase and you like classics, but like, right now when you think about the books that you're really drawn to, what is it that really just piques your interest?
Um, I think things that are character driven.
Hmm.
Um, the plot is important too, but it's to me, it's about the characters. That's really what motivates me to read.
Hmm.
Um, that sort of immersive feeling of being in a different world or a different time. I love books that are set in old mansions or estates, where the house is like another character. Um, I love books that have found family and, where people may kind of have a hodgepodge group of people that eventually become really close and are a big part of each other's lives. I think that's always so heartwarming to me.
Hmm.
Um, and I really am enjoying middle grade a lot now. Uh,
Hmm.
I feel like I got so advanced as a reader as a child that I kind of said, this is no longer for me. The adult section, and I moved over there before I should have, not in terms of like reading things I shouldn't have, but
Right.
I missed out on a lot of children's literature that is so good and still,
Yes.
even to me now, I'm like, why did I not read this? I would have loved it so much as a kid, and I still
Right.
love it now.
Yes.
So things like Betsy Tacy, I didn't read those books when I was a kid, and I love them
Hmm.
now.
Yes.
So it's fun discovering some new things in the
Hmm.
middle grade realm as well. And sort of the same things I'm looking for there, just the warmth and coziness and
Hmm.
good people.
Hmm.
Um, so I really like that. And
Yes.
sometimes I do like a really dramatic family saga or something really heartbreaking that, as long as it's not too heartbreaking or it has a happy ending.
Hmm. Yes.
I don't want a total downer, but I do
Hmm.
love a lot of angst and drama sometimes when I'm in the right mood.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Like the Sunbirds, or I mean,
Yes.
that's not a feel good, but oh man, it's so good.
It, it it isn't like the most feel, but I think it is like the overall sense of the Thornbirds.
Yeah,
Like when you leave there's just something so wonderful about it.
yeah, absolutely. I think maybe
Talk
it's just
about evoking a place.
survival
Yes.
and the
And a
next
family
generation.
and this world, and such a Australian novel. Like, I think it's sort of like quintessentially Australian in its feel. That like
Absolutely.
larger than life kind of scope to it.
And I love that. I do love the larger than life. That can be
Mhm.
something I really enjoy as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So my next question, and I know this is a little bit of a harder question, but what are three books that you find yourself most often recommending to people? And I know that's a really broad question because,
Yeah,
everybody has different reading tastes, but are there some books that you just find yourself more often recommending than not?
there are. And so a couple of them are series. So I just brought one of the series, but
Okay.
one of them is the Royal Spinus books by Reese Bowen.
Mm-hmm.
This is a cozy mystery series, and I think it was Kate Howe who recommended them to me. And I love them. There are probably 17 or 18 now, and she puts one out pretty regularly, like once a year.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a heroine who is a very minor member of the British royal family. She was like 35th in line to the throne or something. And so one of her grandparents was a son or cousin or something of Queen Victoria, and her other one is a lower class police officer. So she's living kind of between these two worlds, and she's always broke, and she has no skills. And
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't want to marry some kind of horrible guy that her, Queen Mary wants her to get up with this prince or different people. So she's trying to figure out what to do with her life.
Mhm.
And she manages to start finding murders everywhere she goes, as these things tend to go. And so she starts solving mysteries. And it's just so fun because she's very funny. She's very witty and self-deprecating. And she gets into the craziest scrapes. And there's like a recurring cast of characters. So her half-brother and his horrible wife, and the some members of the royal family are in the book. Her grandfather, who's just so lovable. She has a
Mhm.
best friend who's just kind of a social butterfly and always getting into things. She meets a man named Darcy who seems to have some sort of mysterious past. He's an aristocrat, but also down on his luck. And
Mhm.
so you follow the mysteries, but you also follow the story of her life.
Right.
And they're just so light and breezy and
Mhm.
fun. And this is another one that if I'm feeling like, "Ugh, I don't want to read anything, I don't know what to do," I'll
Mhm.
just pick up the next one in the series.
Mhm.
I think you would love this. I think a lot of people would love them.
Yes.
They're just really a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a bind up of the first three books in that series on my shelf. So this
Yeah.
coming year is the year I'm going to finally read Her Royal
I
Spider.
think you'll love it. So I've
Yes.
been trying to not read them too fast. I'll read, a
Mhm.
few a year because I don't want to run out because I love them so much.
Right.
Hopefully she's still writing them for now.
Yes.
So we'll
Yes.
see. And obviously they're set like between the wars. So I don't know if
Mhm.
I'm planning to end them once the war starts or if it'll
Right.
keep going. The tone, I feel the tone would be quite different once the war starts, but
Sure. Yeah.
there's something about that interwar years that's just so
Mhm.
interesting to me.
Right. Yes. I agree.
And the next one I know 100% you're going to be excited about. M Lion.
And then Lion.
I don't really exactly even know how I found out about these books other than just seeing them on Instagram all the time. People were,
Mhm.
you know, because they're self-published. So it's the Emma M. Lyon, the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon by Beth Brower.
Mhm.
So far, there are seven, and the eighth volume's coming out in December. I can't wait.
Yes, me too.
Um, so it's like a hidden gem. It's almost like
It
a
is.
cult favorite. Do you know what I mean? It's
It
like,
is.
you know,
Mhm.
you love.
Yes.
Because they're so good. This heroine is set kind of in a alternate Victorian era, I guess you could
Mhm.
say.
Yep.
Um, and she is kind of down on her luck, plucky heroine,
Yep.
very literary and very smart. And she moves back to her home
Mhm.
that, for various reasons, has been taken over by a horrible cousin of hers. And she's trying to get on with her life. And she meets interesting people, including three really interesting men.
Mhm.
And I can't explain it. It's set in a diary form.
Yep.
Um, and it's just totally readable, funny, laugh out
Mhm.
loud funny, sometimes really touching.
Mhm.
There's sense of romance and just fun. It's
Yes.
just absolute fun. So I totally recommend them. They're on, um, if you have Amazon Unlimited, I
Yep.
think it's on there for free
Yes.
as ebooks, but of
Mhm.
course I have to buy my own copies because I love them.
I know. Me too. I think you're the person who I first saw post about them. So
Oh yeah. Oh, that's good. I love to hear that.
yes. So I think I saw you, and then it was one of those things. You know how like it's like you hear a new word or something, and then you keep
Yeah.
hearing it everywhere. And I think it was like I saw you post about them, and then suddenly they were just popping up
They're
everywhere.
everywhere.
So I
Yeah,
was
that's
like,
how I felt too.
right? I'm like, I
I-
have to look into these books.
and once you start one, it's like you just can't stop.
They're like popcorn, right? It's just you have to keep going.
Ew, and I know, so I'm excited for your read
Yes.
along with the whole series next year.
No.
It's going to be really fun to
Yes.
read them again and to have people to discuss them with.
I know. I
Because
know.
when you don't, you're like, you don't understand how good these books are.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And for anyone who's just hearing about this for the first time, if you want to join my read along, I'll have a link to the announcement video in the description box and you can check that out and join us.
And just one more, which I already talked
Yes.
about, with the Blue Castle.
Mhm.
So I do recommend this to a lot of people who maybe have never read Ellen Montgomery before,
Mhm.
or if they've read Anne but nothing else. I'm like, you have to read this one too because
Yeah.
it's really so good. And
Mhm.
um, it's about, a young woman who has just been downtrodden by her family,
Mhm.
and she finds out that she is ill and not going to make it, right? So she decides, I'm just going to do what I want in life for once. And it kind of just turns her whole life around. So
Mhm.
it's beautifully written and it's so good. And don't worry, it has a happy ending. So
Yes,
no
it does.
spoilers, but it's good. So anyway, those I would highly recommend to pretty much anybody that I
Hmm.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, those are all fantastic. So let's talk about not reading. And I know we've talked about you have had a reading slump this year. It's been a fairly ongoing struggle for quite
Yeah.
a number of months. But I think people don't talk about reading slumps enough and kind of,
Yeah.
what that is like, especially if you're a really big reader. And I think it
Mhm.
happens to everyone, but I'd love it if maybe you could share a little bit about it and kind of how you handled it. I know it was tough at
Yeah.
times
It
and kind
is
of what
hard.
got you
It
back
is hard.
into reading.
Especially, I think it's even harder for me now that reading is part of my social life too,
Yes.
because of being on Bookstagram and having bookish friends like you that I want to talk to about books. And if I'm just out of that, then you feel disconnected in a way. So it's more than just, bummer, I can't read a book right now.
Right. Hmm.
Um, but and sometimes it happens when I'm feeling stressed about other things or depressed or just in a
Hmm.
funk about something. But sometimes it happens when I'm just busy with other things.
Hmm.
I have a lot of other hobbies that I want to do and limited
Right.
time, like all working adults. So I love interior decorating and I love playing the piano and I love gardening and I love cooking. And it's like I only have so much time. And so
Hmm.
sometimes I'll get into an obsession. Like earlier this year, I was really working on my house,
Hmm.
a bunch of decorating. And so that was kind of my focus. And I just didn't feel like doing anything else. So when that happens, I try to just go with it and enjoy what I'm enjoying right now,
Hmm.
know that eventually I'll be back in that reading mood and it'll be fine.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know. It's just probably learning to be patient with myself and just
Hmm.
not put pressure on myself because that almost makes it worse to
Yes.
try to force yourself
Right.
to read. And then you start hating it and you're like, well, I don't want to hate this. This is my most loved thing?
Yes.
So yeah. And then when I do start feeling that urge to read, I just let myself read whatever I want. So I'll reread things I really love,
Hmm.
or read children's books, or read historical romance, light things to
Hmm.
try, or, the Royal Spineless, that's a good one for me too, whenever I'm in the
Right.
mood to just get back into it.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of all I can do. I don't know
Hmm.
what else there is other than just
Yeah. I mean,
fine.
yeah, I think
Reading
reading
is a
slumps
good part
are
of it. It's not all of life. So,
right.
so when you're in a period of doing other things, watching TV every night, fine,
Hmm.
enjoy that, do
Yes,
that. Then
absolutely.
eventually you'll go back. So,
Right. I mean, that's what I always say. Like, reading will always be there. Books will always be there.
yeah.
So if this is the season of life where you don't have the time, you don't have the energy, you just are not feeling like reading, like that's perfectly okay. You're still a reader. I mean, it's just we all have those periods of time in our life, or they could be short, they could be long, but I think just lean into what does feel good to you. And um also, I do have to just say as a side note, everybody needs to go check out Melissa's Instagram account so that you can see her home, which is
Oh,
so beautiful and cozy. And I have
cute.
told her I just want to go move in and just live there.
You're welcome anytime. The guest room will be ready for you.
Awesome. I'm coming.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's one of those things I really love.
Yes, and you're so good at it. You just have such a beautiful eye. So, absolutely. That's one of my favorite things is to scroll through your Instagram and look at all your cozy home little
Thank you.
videos and pictures and
Makes me feel good.
because it's not my forte. I do love, like, I love to look at beautifully designed homes, but I just don't have, I get very overwhelmed by that kind of stuff. So it's just not much to my mom's chagrin because she's a wonderful decorator. She's a beautiful home too, and I did not get that gene.
Well, that's what people like us are there for to help you.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm like,
And
well, that's why I have
out of
beautiful, yeah, I have people in my life to make my home beautiful for me, help me
it.
do that. Okay, so off of the reading slump, I know, it was quite a few months this year, but I know you've read some good books in spite of that. So what's one of your favorite books that you've read so far this year?
Right. So I cheated and brought three.
Yes, love it. Please cheat. More
I couldn't,
books is always better.
couldn't narrow it down. So the top three so far that I've read this year, this one is called The Bookish Life of Nina Hill by Abby Waxman. And
Hmm.
this is one of those books that I read it and I thought, this is me. This heroine is me.
Yes.
She's very shy. She has
Mhm.
sort of anxiety issues. She's a big reader. She loves to read and she likes to just be at home doing her cozy things with her cat.
Yep.
And a series of circumstances come to her life where she has to get out in the world more, engage more with people, meet new people. And it's hard for her, but it ends up being the best thing for her
Mm-hmm.
and opens up her world in a great way. So I felt very inspired by this book. And
Mm-hmm.
it's also very funny, like laugh out loud funny, and just a humorous and sweet and really good.
Yes.
So I really recommend this. I'm excited to read more of her Abby Waxman's books.
Yes.
Yeah. This
Yeah.
one definitely made a big impression on me.
I love that book when I read it too. It's
Yeah, it's
fantastic.
really good.
Yes.
Another one was The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the first of her books that I've read. I read it in October because it was, it's like a ghost story. It's very gothic, spooky, set in the kind of rundown estate house in England. And it's just amazingly written. It's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm just dying for someone else to read it so I can discuss it with them. Because
I know, I'm going to. I really want to read it.
I'm excited for you to read it.
Yes.
So I think if you like Shirley Jackson kind of ghost
Mm-hmm.
stories, or if you like Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, those kind of books, I
Mm-hmm.
think this is a good one to read.
Yes.
Probably like it.
Yeah. I'm
And
excited.
then probably my very, very favorite read of the year so far is Rules of Civility by Amor
Mm-hmm.
Towle.
Yes.
This book is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's set in the 1930s, and it's hard to even explain what it's about. It's about
Right.
young people in New York
Mm-hmm.
and sort of complications of their life and sort of high society class. There's a lot, it reminded me a lot of Edith Wharton
Yes.
in terms of like the class
Mm-hmm.
divides of New York
Yep.
and money, new money, secrets people are keeping. But it's just totally entertaining and so well written.
Yes.
I've had this on my shelf for a long time, and I don't wish I had read it sooner. But sometimes the book comes at the right time.
It does.
But I'm like, this is my kind of book right here.
Yes.
So highly recommend this one.
100%. That's a fantastic book. I need to reread that book. It's been so many years since I first read it because I think I read it when it first came out in paperback. So,
It was one of those books. It just left me with a book hangover because I was like, nothing else is going to be as good as this. I love
right?
it so much.
Yes.
And I just wanted to stay in that world longer.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, you know what? Since you love that book, I posted about it on Instagram. I also posted it here on my booktube channel have you read The Lost Art of Keeping Secrets by Eva
I
Rice?
have, but it's been probably back when it first was published. So however long,
Yeah.
15 years ago or something.
I mean, they're very different books, and Rules of Civility is set in New York, I believe, and Lost Art of Keeping Secrets is set in London, and but they just something about the tone of them and the main female characters, like there's just something about them that kind of they feel like they're two peas in a pod, kind of.
See that, yeah. And I keep meaning to reread that one. So
Yeah,
maybe next year
yeah,
I'll get to reread
that's a
it.
good one. That's a good one. All right, so we've talked about some of your favorites so far this year, but do you have any anticipated reads for the remainder of the final month of the year?
Well, obviously the new M Lion, that'll
Yes.
be read the first day it comes out, probably.
Mhm.
Although I'm
Same.
excited because it's the longest one of the journals, so it'll be more to enjoy.
Yes.
So that will
Especially because
be
volume 7 was so good.
oh, good. I know it's like she leaves you hanging.
She does.
Um, and then I have never read this book or anything by her, but I know it's
Mm.
set in the holiday season, Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to reading it, and it's very small, which is kind of sometimes what you need in
Yep.
December because life
hmm
is busy.
I
Uh,
mean, you can
yeah,
read that book in one sitting. Yeah, I read it twice the year. I read it in 2022 and I read it in January and then I read it again in December because I
oh,
loved it
that's a
so
good sign.
much.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm excited. Yeah, that makes me
Yeah.
more excited to read it.
Yes.
This one's another one that's been on my TBR for a really long time, and I haven't read it, so I hope I like it.
You're gonna love it.
I am? Oh,
You
good.
are.
Yay. So that one's Last Christmas in Paris by
Yeah.
Hazel Gale and Heather Webb.
Yes, that one is so good. It's epistolary, so if
Oh,
anyone
I
out there
love
likes
that.
epistolary novels, it's so wonderful. I received it for Christmas one year. I read it like I just think the day after Christmas, I just sat and read it all day and read it in one sitting. And
Nice. And
also,
then there's one more that I'm probably going to try to read this year is The Viscount and the Vicar's Daughter by Mimi Matthews.
I
So
haven't
this is
heard
a
of this.
historical romance,
Hmm
and it's set in the Christmas season as well.
I haven't read any Mimi Matthews, but I've heard so many people talking about her. Have you read anything else by her?
I've read quite a few by her. Some I've really loved and some I've liked okay. So I feel like it just depends.
Right. If you could, I like to ask this question of people because I just think I'm always very curious of the answer. Like, if you could offer up one piece of advice for somebody trying to cultivate a reading life, what would it be?
Yeah, I thought about this one because I've always
Mhm.
struggled with it somewhat myself.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, honestly, it might be something as obnoxious as saying, to put down your phone, turn off the TV. And that's hard to do. And it's hard for me to do because I
Mhm.
like goofing around on my phone and I like watching TV. But
Mhm.
if you're always doing that, and then that's what's easier to do at night after work, you're just wiped out and you just
Mhm.
sit down and watch TV or whatever.
Mhm.
You're not going to read. So
Right.
I would say try to put away those things when you can, focus on the reading, find a cozy spot in your home that has good lighting and a cozy chair,
Mhm.
and you won't regret it. You'll always be sorry. You'll always be glad that you read instead of whatever else pretty much you do.
Right.
Yeah.
So true.
So I don't know. I don't know if that's good advice, or not, or just like, oh God, turn off the TV. But
I think that's perfect advice.
yeah,
Yes.
because it's advice I need to tell myself sometimes.
Same, especially
Yeah.
with the phone. Like, put,
Yes, the phone. I mean, sometimes I come home from work and I'm just like sit down with the cats and I'll just be there for an
yeah,
hour looking at Instagram reels and
I know.
what am I doing with my life?
Right.
There's
I
so many
know.
things to be doing. I
The
just need
time just
more.
flies by on those devices, right? It's
It is
amazing.
like a black hole and time flies by when you're reading too, but
It
it feels
does.
more valuable and
It
more.
does. And not that there's not valuable things out there on the internet, but there is a lot that's not, that,
I mean, I love cats, but how many videos can I watch of cats doing silly things? A
right?
lot, apparently.
Yes. Well, my son would agree. Every night, like while his bath is being filled, we watch silly cat videos. Like, that's what
Yeah,
we do.
okay. There's
So,
no dinner.
yeah. Thank you so much for coming on and talking books with me. You gave so many wonderful recommendations. And I will have all of Melissa's books that she discussed today linked in the description box below for those of you interested in checking any of them out. And thank you so much, Melissa. Tell us once again where people can find you on the internet.
So I'm on Instagram and it's a Duchess Inside, all one word. And I do have a few YouTube videos, although I haven't done that in a couple of years and I don't know when or if I will again, but
I love your sort of a vlog style videos. Well, this was so much fun. Thank you so much.
thank you, Jen.
Bye.
Bye.
And that wraps up my bookish conversation part 2 with my friend Melissa. I hope you enjoyed listening to us chat about books, and Melissa has some really wonderful recommendations. I really love her reading taste, and I have found some great books through her advice, and I hope that you do too. I will have all of the books linked in the description box below, so be sure and go check those out if there are any titles that you are interested in. And if you did enjoy this video, if you could hit that like button and subscribe if you aren't already subscribed, I would love to have you join my bookish community. And if you haven't heard already, I have started a Patreon, and if you would like to join us over there for additional bookish content, bookish connection, and bookish conversation, I would love to have you join us. The information for my Patreon is always listed in the description box below, as well as in my channel information. Thank you so much for watching this video, for supporting my channel. I really do appreciate it. I love all of the bookish connections and conversations that we have in the comments. Melissa and I would love to chat with you in the comments below, so let's chat about nonfiction books, historical romance, general cozy books, all that good stuff. I will also have a link to part 1 of my conversation with Melissa down below as well if you want to check that out and get even more bookish recommendations from her. And again, thank you for watching, and I'll be back with another video very soon. Bye!